Welcome to today's episode of TheSquare. As you can tell, we have gotten out of the studio. We are in Dublin, Ireland. I'm here with Maurice O'Neill, who is the principal in charge of our Dublin office. Thank you for being here, Maurice.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
I got to tell you, when I think typical Dublin weather, sunny and breezy and mild is not what comes to mind.
Well, listen, you guys have obviously brought the weather with you, so it's nice to see. So I'll take it. It's really good.
Well, so you were born and grew up in Dublin, right?
Oh, yes, that's
Tell
right.
me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're obviously in the Phoenix Park in Dublin. I'm actually from Lucan, which is only a stone's throw away from the park itself. So, born and raised in Lucan, and I suppose spent a lot of my time playing around here, even as a young kid, and in later years, obviously, when I started to run and get into marathon running, just became, I suppose, my second home in terms of marathon training and doing a lot of running,
And you've done some marathons, and when you're gearing up and getting in that mindset, this is where you come to run?
Yeah, so this becomes my playground as such, and when I'm doing my long runs, it becomes my second home again. So, a lot of the time I'll come in here, hit the park in an early morning, and before people start coming in and cars and congestion, and just clocking up the miles and getting the hours in for marathon training.
So when you're running, because I am not even remotely close to being able to run a marathon, but I've realized I've run just enough to know how important the mental part of it is. What are you thinking about when you're running?
A lot of people ask me that question, and it's, for me personally, I actually just take it all in. So especially with some with a place like this, it's you've got so much going on around you in terms of obviously greenery, the wildlife, and it's just a great place to kind of turn your brain off and not think about anything really.
Yeah.
I suppose in terms of architecture and the profession that we're in, it's fast paced. There's a lot going on. So for me, this is how I kind of detune and desensitize to what I'm doing day to day. So I don't really think about anything, to be honest.
It's a good time just to clear everything out.
Yeah, it's actually, and I find as well, if I'm working on a job or if there's something happening, that's project specific, a lot of the time I'll go for a run, and it'll come to me almost like a eureka moment where you'll come back and say, okay, you get clarity, and you say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and it's so many times over the years where I've used it and it's worked, so
it's like when you just turn the part of your brain off that wants to solve the problem, the solution appears.
Exactly, and it's like to say, when you're in depth with something, if you step away and then go back in,
yeah,
sometimes you can find the answer to the problem and then go back in and resolve it. So I think for me, that's very much why I enjoy it so much,
So in terms of problem solving and projects and whatnot, obviously an extremely talented architect. Is that something that was it, I feel like when I talk to people, it's one of two things. It was just always there, you were always drawing and playing with Legos, or you got into university and it just clicked as, oh, this is what I was supposed to have been doing.
Well, for me personally, I suppose my earliest memories would have been Lego, as you said. I had buckets and buckets of Lego growing up, and I would spend hours and hours and hours, and obviously with the Irish weather, because it rained so much, I was never really outside, so I spent a lot of time indoors building and creating with Lego. I suppose that's probably one of my earliest memories. But I suppose getting, leading on in later years, my older brother is actually an architect, so I was already immersed, and it was already around me, but I just didn't really pay attention to it, So I found that, growing up, we shared a room. So when he was obviously in college, late nights on the drawing board, lamp tilting over, I was curiously looking over the top bunk, looking down at sections and elevations and details, and asking questions about what's that, and how does that work, and little I know that that was going to drive my career and where I was going to end up myself going forward, which is unique, so it was nice.
Then you get to university, you decide to go and be an architect. Then what happens?
So I suppose, from obviously growing up with my brother and seeing that in terms of what he was doing, I would say fell into it, but I'd say even before going to college, it was secondary school was where I probably first started to get a love for it. And I had an art teacher who actually gave me, it was a pencil or a line drawing book that showed a lot of buildings from Dublin, like Georgia and Dublin. And she basically gave me the book and said, start sketching some of these buildings. And doing it by hand and just freehand. And then once I had the freehand ready, we would then obviously go on and just, use ink pens. And that was probably the start of it. And then obviously seeing my brother in the profession at that stage, I decided, look, I'll give it a try and see how it goes. So it actually wasn't my first, how would you say, what I was looking to get into as a teenager and into adult life. It was actually, I wanted to be a chef.
Really?
Yeah. So again, older sister was a chef. Again, so seeing my sister obviously day to day cooking and again, I think there's obviously a lot of similarities between, a chef, an architect, designer, in terms of creativity, presentation, and I suppose it's I tried it a little bit when I was in college. I actually worked. I was a kitchen porter. Sorry, I was a kitchen porter in a hotel on the weekends. But what would happen is the chef would never turn up. So myself and the manager and whoever was working on the day
ended up being the chef.
Yeah.
Huh?
So I got a steep learning curve into how to cook at again at an early age.
Okay, so between you and your wife Emma, who cooks more?
Okay, so I'm going to give you the honest answer. In the last 2 years, I'd say Emma.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I'd say it was me.
It was you?
Yeah. So I need to get back into it.
All right, and you have 2 sons.
I have 2 boys, Adam and Harry.
And who would Adam and Harry prefer to have cooking? I'm going to put you on the spot.
What's the dish?
Dinner.
I'm going to say me. Because there's generally no vegetables and it's just pure carbs.
Fair enough. So were there any other creative industries that you thought about going into besides cooking, apart from architecture?
Does basketball count?
Absolutely.
Well, I suppose I was convinced, and I played basketball as a teenager, and obviously I hadn't got the height for it. I wasn't nowhere near 6 foot, but I was convinced I was going to go to the NBA. But obviously with height and ability, that quickly wore off. So,
well, I can tell you sometimes height, but still no ability just doesn't really work out.
Well, I had speed, which was on my side.
Oh, there you go.
So, but yeah, that was probably my other profession.
So you're a big NBA fan then?
Absolutely love it.
And your favorite team is?
Chicago Bulls.
Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
But I get the impression you're not a fair weather fan. You've been a Chicago Bulls fan for a while.
So I go back to Michael Jordan era, Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, obviously, who coaches the Golden State Warriors. So again, I'm going back. I'm going to say old school.
How many games have you been to?
NBA games?
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, I've been to Madison Square.
Oh, okay.
I saw the Knicks play the Bulls, actually.
Really?
And then outside that, a couple of European games, and obviously in Ireland.
Yeah. And then a lot of TV watching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now, a little birdie told me, and I was really surprised to hear this, I'll be honest, but that you are really into metal.
Yes.
Obviously, a headbanger.
So, less hair. But again, back in the day, massive metal head.
So how did you get into metal?
Again, I'm going to say my older brother. So there's probably a bit of a trend here in terms of siblings and what they were actually into growing up and profession-wise. But again, I played the guitar. My brother played the guitar. So growing up, there was a lot of Metallica, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
There was a lot of vinyl in the bedroom, and my brother had a stereo that he got back in the day, which I think he got it for his 21st, and it was great big old school piece
massive
of
stereo.
Kit, and the speakers were probably this size as well each. So so that was how the love of metal started.
So did your parents have to hit the ceiling with the broomstick to tell you to turn it down?
Again, the funny thing is, growing up, I had a Marshall amplifier. Well, actually, it was my brother's amp. It was a 150 watt Marshall, which I suppose when I was 10 or 11 was probably the same height as me.
Fair enough.
I would literally go into the room and would crank it up and literally just play like crazy, shut the door, shut the windows, and literally every now and again you'd hear the thump.
thump.
So that was the nod to turn it down. So, but no, they were fantastic, and obviously growing up, playing heavy metal in your house with obviously having 5 other siblings is, it's very loud. So
5 other siblings.
Yeah,
so you were in a family of 6 kids.
I'm actually a twin. I have a twin sister.
Really?
Yeah.
And what did your folks do?
So my dad worked in a construction, actually making concrete blocks.
Oh, okay.
An Irish company back in the day called CPI. So he worked there, and then my mum was a homemaker.
Yeah.
So she was at home. And she
With
brought us up.
6 kids, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, exactly. So it was it was definitely it was interesting times growing up, you know.
Yeah. So with metal, was it specific to British bands, Irish bands, or was it any kind of metal?
I suppose it probably started off as Irish, so Tin Lizzy, Gary Moore. I suppose I'm really going back here in terms of the origins, and then British bands like Iron Maiden, Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I saw Def Leppard 2 weeks ago in Marley Park.
Did you really?
Motley Crue and Def Leppard were playing, so that was a bit of a blast from the past to see those guys, and they're still playing away, which is nice to see,
Well, I want to go in and sit down and have a little bit more of a conversation about architecture. But before we do that, and before we leave the park, tell me a little bit about, I know you've run several marathons. Mm-hmm. Is there a marathon you haven't done yet? Is there something that you want to do that you haven't done yet in running?
Yeah, I think probably the Boston Marathon is probably one for me, and the New York one. I think they're probably the two that are on my bucket list. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years that I can hopefully get to toe the line on one of those and kind of get back into it. So when
you're training, obviously you've been running through this park, which is just, I'd put it on the same level as Central Park or Hyde Park. It's huge.
Yeah.
Is there a moment or two that you remember, like coming up on wildlife or anything that when you were training that just kind of stands out to you?
Well, actually, in the park itself, on any given day, you can see, on the periphery, if you're doing a long run, you can come across deer, rabbit, just a vast amount of wildlife. And I suppose because it's so city centre, or it's in an urban area, that it's nice to have that connection with obviously an urban setting.
Yeah.
And obviously something like this, so it's quite unique, and I suppose it's very peaceful. It's really, really peaceful.
So do you see a similarity in the at times grueling and at times joyful exuberance of running in comparison with some of the projects that you've worked on?
Yeah, most definitely. I suppose marathon running, and marathon training, it's a long process, but I suppose the process itself is bite size. You start off really light and you build and you build and you build. So I think for me, in terms of working in architecture and design, it's very much the same approach that you start from the start.
Yeah.
And you approach it very slowly, and you build, and then it starts to come together. And I think having run my own business for a number of years, and in the profession that we're in, that I'd never give up.
Yeah.
Always keep on going. Even if it's only a small little gain, or you can take away something, whether it's on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or even a monthly. You just take those little wins and you move forward. But I suppose, again, you never give up. You just keep on striving forward.
Well, and I would, not to push the analogy too far, but I would imagine each race or project you complete makes you that much more prepared for the next one you're going to tackle.
Yeah, again, I suppose what we do, a lot of people say it's repetitive in terms of the approach and the process, but I suppose working on different projects, different design teams, different clients, that's what kind of makes it very unique, that on any given day, no two projects are the same, and I think that's what keeps it fresh, and that's what keeps it interesting. I suppose I'm in the industry 23 years now, and it doesn't feel like 23 years.
Yeah.
It's just my body might feel it a little bit more, and facially, and the hair is probably thinned out and gone. What am I saying? But it's definitely been fantastic industry to be in.
So, Maurice, tell me a little bit about where we are.
So you're sitting in what's going to be our brand new office space in Dublin, in the capital, in the docks area. It's 5,500 square feet of Cat A currently at the minute, so 360-degree panoramic view.
This is incredible.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's really, really nice, Looking forward to getting in.
Tell me a little bit about the importance. We have the London, UK office. Tell me a little bit about the importance of having a Dublin office in addition to that, in terms of kind of a gateway to the EU.
Yeah, I suppose our position globally is obviously we're nestled in between obviously you guys in the States and obviously
Right.
and London, so we're very much that bridge and that connection between the different time zones. So again, having the UK office there for us has been fantastic, to have a big brother on this side and obviously in Singapore as well. So I think very much going forward in terms of business and growing Corgan as a company, it's positioning us nicely into Europe and further, so it's going to be good.
We were just talking about how marathons like projects can continue to prep you for the next one, and here you are literally with a blank slate.
Yeah.
But it's more than just another office space. It's a home for Corgan here in Dublin as part of the EU, and it's also just a home base to begin to do even more incredible work throughout the world. Do you feel that kind of responsibility and that weight, or is it something you just kind of take in stride?
Thanks for bringing it up, Brandon. No, I suppose for me, it's, I like to put myself out of my comfort zone, and, obviously the responsibility and what we're doing, it's, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's, it's very much rewarding. I know we're early days in terms of the journey, but it's, I've got a really good team. I've got obviously great support network in terms of the Corgan family. So it's easy when you've got the right people around you. So it's going good.
And you've been an architect for going on 23 years now. You've done a lot of different types of architecture. You've worked for companies. You've very successfully owned your own business. What is it as the principal for the Dublin office, and you think back to kind of what got you here? Is there something you'd wished you told your older, your younger self, now that you're, further down the journey?
Yeah, I suppose it's, trust the process, believe in what you're doing, and, listen to your family, listen to your friends, and, take advice, and don't take it personally if you're doing something wrong and you need to redivert and get it back on track. And it's, just trust the process. I think that's probably one of my biggest mantras throughout the years,
So I know this may be, kind of a tough question. Is there something you wish you'd done differently along the way?
Again, this might sound odd, but no, again, I think it's, everything that's happened for a reason, and, with the things that went wrong, I've learned from those, and the things that went right, obviously, I've taken from that. So it's very much, just take it in your stride and, run with it. Yeah.
Are there projects that have stand out to you across your portfolio of work that just kind of stand out as pieces that were milestone pieces for you?
Yeah, I suppose to flip that question, I suppose there was one project in particular where it was a high-end residential. It was back in 2019, and the client actually became very ill during the process, and was hospitalized, and his wife basically continued on and basically had told us, as a design team, keep on going with the project, this is what you have to do, and the sense of, taking ownership and responsibility for something like that as a project was very rewarding. The client actually recovered and made, full recovery.
That's awesome.
But the project itself, it was bizarre in the sense that the client wasn't actually there to make the decisions. So we were making the decisions for the client from their side, and obviously from our side as a design team,
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much, it was quite odd as a project. We could talk about obviously, the projects that are, big milestones, and
Sure.
So yeah, in terms of the project itself, client was obviously ill, and we managed to hand it over. He got out of hospital and made a full recovery. So to see his face on completion, because he actually didn't see the house finished until he got out of hospital. So his wife actually very much kept a secret from him. So to see his reaction and his facial expression, obviously when he saw it in the end, was fantastic. So again, it was a big milestone as a project.
How have you seen architecture change over the last 23 years? And the next question is going to be, where do you see it going? So just know that that's coming.
Yeah, okay.
But how have you seen it change?
Change, I suppose for me, coming out of college, I was probably on that cusp of going from, say, a drawing board to a computer. And even that in itself was obviously, unique and, a big milestone. So again, in that 23 years, it's gone from, AutoCAD, 2D format to Revit, and obviously 3D, AI, and it's on a daily basis, it's just constantly changing. So you know, in that short space of time, technology has advanced so much. So it's, yeah, definitely on the technology side, I think it's.
So where do you see that technology taking us?
Again, it's further enhancements on the technology, and you know, it's I suppose it's more at the minute. I suppose you've got AI coming into the industry as well, so that's going to be a game changer. I think for architecture and design. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens with that over the next couple of months and even a couple of years ahead. So it's going to be good.
Is there a project that you that's kind of your holy grail project, if you will, something that is, you know, you've always wanted to do?
Always wanted to do. I suppose my background in obviously in interiors and, you know, commercial fit out. I suppose we had a recent project there was a luxury watch store in just off Dublin Central, and again I suppose having 7 top brands, global brands, and obviously delivering their concept and, you know, their brands within Dublin was unique for us. You know, it was really good.
Is there anything that is out there that you would want to do that you haven't been able to do yet?
So yeah, in terms of, I suppose obviously Corgan having a you know a massive reputation in terms of aviation and aviation design. I suppose for us, you know, in Dublin, that's something that I'm really excited about in terms of it's another industry that we're going to obviously embark on. So it's yeah, it's going to be really good to see how that unfolds, and obviously how we can assist.
Yeah.
Obviously the US and obviously the London office for aviation going forward. So yeah, definitely aviation.
Tell me a little bit about the advantages that having an office in Dublin brings in terms of kind of opening up the rest of Europe.
I suppose it's, you know, Dublin in terms of its proximity, I suppose, to mainland Europe is obviously, you know, you're talking about an hour or two in terms of flight times and travel times. So it's a short skip and a hop to mainland Europe. And obviously in terms of the time zone itself, we're obviously on the same time zone. So that makes it a lot easier in terms of doing business day to day.
Yeah.
And then obviously that link between the States and Europe itself. So it makes it a lot easier.
And then being in the EU offers a lot of opportunities in terms of.
Yeah, again, obviously with Ireland being in the EU, obviously with London, obviously, and UK post Brexit, it kind of cemented our position even stronger for a lot of companies to do business in Dublin, and obviously going into Europe itself. So it's
awesome. So, you know, when you're looking at the map and you see the proximity of London and Dublin, you're like, wow, that's really close together. But really, the two of them partnering, they open up a lot of new opportunities. Walk me through some of the advantages of having the Dublin office.
Well, I think that's probably a really good question in terms of, you know, our experience in terms of what we do in Dublin, because we're special projects. So there's no other, I suppose, office or team within the Corgan family that would have multi-sectoral.
Yeah.
So we're not just data centers, we're not just aviation. So, you know, we're across what you guys call multifamily. We're residential, we do retail, we do interiors, we do workplace. Now we're doing aviation, and then hopefully down the future as well, we'll do some data centers as well. So again, we're working across multi sectors there. So I suppose where we are at the minute in terms of our position, we're a gateway or a connection between the States, obviously London and Singapore, and feeding that into mainland Europe. So it's very much it's nice for us that we're that kind of that piece in the middle that's taking all this kind of outside information and bringing it in. So it's unique in the sense that it's, you know, it's new for us, but it's
And with Dublin being in the EU, it opens the doors to the rest of Europe, really.
Yeah, again, you know, in terms of proximity, travel time,
yeah,
it's quite close. So it makes it a lot easier, you know, in terms of carrying out projects that we can get there.
Yeah.
And nice and quick.
Obviously, with a new office, there's a lot of excitement that goes into that. What is it that's exciting you and the rest of the Dublin office about the work and the projects that are coming up?
Well, as you can see, it's a big space. We've got a lot of space to fill. We're excited about obviously, you know, building the team out, and, you know, in terms of projects, you know, growing the projects, the size, the complexity.
Yeah.
Again, you know, the team is like we're all itching to get into this space and move forward. So it's really exciting. So looking forward to it.
Have you picked out the location for your office in the new layout yet?
I have, yes. and it's over on the north side of the city. So yeah, I'm tucked over in the corner with a very special view. So I can't complain. It's it's really good.
You're going to have a space, a media lab designated desk somewhere where we can just come and camp out for a few weeks.
We've actually got an area designated. We've got sofas, we've got TVs.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what
coffee
media lab
machine.
means. Yeah.
So it's
Snack bar. Yeah,
exactly.
got it.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Well, you'll definitely have to invite us back once you've gotten it all finished out. We have the media lab cubby area with our snack bar. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, please comment below and make sure to check us out next time. In a guitar riff-off, who would win, you or Francis?
What style of music?
Oh, good question. We'll pick rock because I don't think that's your sweet spot or his sweet spot.
I'll give it to Francis.
Okay, fair enough.
Ask me off camera.